So, have you ever actually stopped to wonder if making money is the absolute sole purpose of a business? It's kind of an age-old assumption, right? We tend to think a company exists purely to maximize its bottom line and just hand cash back to its owners. But what if we thought of a business not as this isolated profit machine, but as a living, breathing part of a much larger ecosystem? I mean, if a company draws literally everything it needs to survive from society, doesn't it owe something back?
Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide for today's topic. We're going to take a really structured, analytical look at the social responsibilities of business. So let's just dive right in and explore exactly how modern enterprises fit into the broader fabric of our society.
All right, here's our roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll look beyond the bottom line. Second, why bother with responsibility? Third, the stakeholder balancing act. And finally, protecting our planet. Starting off with Section 1, Beyond the Bottom Line, let's reimagine the true purpose of a firm. The fundamental premise here is that absolutely no organization survives in total isolation. It draws everything it needs from its environment. And this brings us to a pretty stark contrast: legal responsibility versus social responsibility. You see, legal responsibility is really just the bare minimum. It's mere compliance with the law. Social responsibility, on the other hand, is a whole lot broader. It involves voluntary action by business leaders to genuinely benefit the society they rely on. This right here is the very core of business ethics. It's about those moral principles that guide corporate behavior, helping leaders clearly distinguish between what is merely legal and what is fundamentally right. And this isn't just some modern corporate trend. It's anchored really deeply in history. Mahatma Gandhi actually hit the nail on the head with his socioeconomic philosophy of trusteeship. The whole idea here is that wealthy individuals and business leaders shouldn't view their resources as purely their own, but rather they should act as trustees, looking after the welfare of the people in general. It completely reframes how we look at the power dynamic of wealth. Moving on to Section 2, Why Bother with Responsibility? Let's look at the driving forces behind corporate ethics. Okay, let's be real for a second. If you run a profit-driven enterprise, why voluntarily take on extra social burdens? Well, first, let's look at the strategic internal benefits. Fulfilling social responsibility is actually incredibly good for a firm's long-term self-interest. By actively looking out for the welfare of society, a company built immense trust. I mean, businesses spend massive amounts on brand building, and a socially responsible company naturally enjoys a rock-solid reputation. And guess what? That directly translates to increased sales, higher profitability, and it makes you a magnet for top-tier talent. Plus, responsible businesses are uniquely positioned to utilize their vast resources optimally, which avoids massive costly wastage. But hey, it's not just about the internal perks. External pressures are totally forcing the issue too. Society's expectations have shifted dramatically. Add in immense pressure from trade unions demanding fair conditions and strict government regulations, which, let's be honest, businesses usually prefer to avoid by just regulating themselves first. And it's actually staggering how quickly public backlash can completely destroy a brand's market value overnight when they ignore complex social problems. The key takeaway here is that both the carrot of long-term profit and the stick of regulation are driving corporate ethics forward. Which brings us to Section 3, the Stakeholder Balancing Act. We're zooming out from the core. To really grasp a business's obligations, we're going to use this zooming out framework. We'll start at the very center of the company. Right at the core, we have the owners and investors. These are the folks providing the capital and taking on massive risks. The absolute primary responsibility to them is to ensure a reasonable profit. But it's also about proper conduct, transparent meetings, timely notices, and maintaining prestige so that the people who funded the dream feel totally secure in their investment. Zooming out just a little bit, we reach the people inside the walls, the employees. They are the human resource engine of any organization, and they absolutely require job security to work with real dedication. Alongside offering fair remuneration and solid wage plans, businesses have to treat their people with dignity and mutual respect. Let's face it, without a loyal, motivated team, a business is kind of just a hollow shell. Zooming out even further, we hit the market itself, the consumers. Ethical businesses must actively avoid any unfair trade practices that lead to customer exploitation. There's no room for artificially fixing prices or engaging in monopolistic competition. The goal should always, always be full satisfaction and respecting consumer rights. Why does this matter so much? Because today, thanks to mass media and education, consumers are highly conscious of their power. Mess with that trust, and the market will turn on you instantly. Taking another step back, we reach the regulators, the government. A socially responsible business doesn't treat the government like some enemy they need to outsmart. Instead, they recognize a duty to support the systematic economic development of the country. This means strictly adhering to regulations, stepping up to cooperate during national crises, and, crucially, paying proper taxes accurately and on time to fund national security and public infrastructure. And now, zooming out to the widest societal lens, we look at the local community and the public in general. Industrial plants have a massive ripple effect on public health. Because of that, an organization literally must take all possible measures to minimize air and water pollution. Plus, we all know resources like fuel, water, and land are incredibly scarce. It is a strict moral obligation to make the optimum, most efficient use of these resources, so the surrounding community isn't left depleted. All right, Section 4, protecting our planet, the ultimate stakeholder. This brings us to the macro level. The physical environment is literally the platform that makes absolutely all human and business activity possible. Yet it exists in such a fragile balance. And a business's influence here is profound. We're talking about everything from heavy resource extraction to massive amounts of hazardous waste. We're dealing with air, water, and even sound pollution, not to mention mountains of electronic garbage. Protecting the environment isn't just a clever PR move anymore, it's an urgent, absolute necessity. So how do we practically tackle this? Well, responsible businesses are adopting the 4 R's of waste prevention. Step 1 is reduction. Simply preventing waste from being created in the first place is always the best option. Step 2 is reuse. If waste is produced, figure out how to use it again. Step 3 is recycling those materials into brand new products. And finally, step 4 is recovery, extracting energy or materials from waste that just can't be recycled. Next up, the corporate social responsibility mandate. Let's put a hard number on these ethics. As we approach the end of our explainer, we have to look at how modern law is actually quantifying these moral obligations. This isn't just a polite suggestion anymore. Under Section 135 of the Companies Act 2013, large businesses are legally required to dedicate at least 2% of their average net profit towards CSR activities. That 2% slice you see there represents a massive, quantified commitment to doing things like building schools, funding healthcare, and saving the environment. It proves that giving back is now officially embedded into the very mathematics of running a business. Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, zooming all the way out from the boardroom to the boundaries of our planet. And I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a business takes its resources, its workers, and its wealth entirely from society, what happens to that whole ecosystem if it gives absolutely nothing back? It's a huge question that every focused learner, future leader, and informed consumer has to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.